through the work that I've done, the spiritual work, I have often wondered how this paradigm that we live in on the third dimension is both real and not real. So the other day, I part channeled, part thought about this, and I came up with this piece comparing the journey that we're on Earth to being in a maze. So welcome to Collage of Health today. If you're here joining me for the first time, welcome. This is a platform, channel that talks about all things health. And of recent, I've really been focusing more on the spiritual health, doing some channeling, doing some Akashic record work that I'm putting out there. And today I'd love to talk about how life is like a maze. So just picture this giant maze that we're on, that we have to walk through in order to learn lessons that we've decided to learn in this lifetime. And we've scripted this where we get to a portion of the maze. And then we have exit points. So we can complete what we came here to complete, an exit, or we can keep going. Or we can get off before we complete our so-called contract. It's all under the guise of free will. So we've met with these players on the other side who are going to help us grow our soul by helping us travel along on this maze. And often these players are players that we parlayed before, and we've all taken on different roles. And that part to me is not really clear. I mean, it's nice to think that everyone's like good on the other side and we're just kind of helping each other. But I'm not really sure about that at all. So anyway, I'm just going to read some of this to you, and hopefully it resonates. If it doesn't, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because, we all have different parts of the elephant we're touching, so to speak, and we don't really see the full elephant when we're here. So whatever elephant portion or body part you're touching that is different than mine, I'd love to hear it. So along the way, we will meet obstacles and a cast of characters who are on their own walk, and at times will block our progress or assist us as we walk along on this maze path to freedom. So we might have a karmic collide or a dharmic teaching. It's hard to tell which is which. So some people along the way we might identify as friend, but they hinder our progress. Or we might see someone as foe and we quickly move past them, and they help catapult us forward. So sometimes we don't really know who's friend and who's foe. And sometimes we get to decide, if a friend could maybe assist us, but we aren't blocked by them, or a foe, we might be blocked by, even though in some ways they're there to assist us and just help us, push against us so that we can move beyond them. It's easy to get waylaid by distractions and fall asleep in the maze and be tempted by intervals of pleasure or pain that beckons us to stay but creates suffering. So both pleasure and pain can get us stymied and stuck. Within the maze are magnets, and it's easy to get magnetized in one place if we allow it. Once we pass through all the corridors and we reach the end, there's this inner bliss, this alchemy we experience when we find freedom, and we're able to move beyond all of the stages of the maze in our spiritual development. And then we can finally rest in this place of, I called it a pillow of peace and love. There's divine perfection once we're free. So once we get free of this maze, we can either not re-enter the maze, or we can re-enter the maze. And some might ask, well, why would you re-enter the maze? Well, for one thing, you're going to have a flashlight that other people aren't going to have. There's going to be this illumination. And with this illumination, you might be able to come in and help illuminate the path for others. And I really believe Dolores Cannon talked about the three waves of volunteers that came in since like the 50s, 60s up until now. And these waves of volunteers had found freedom, but they re-entered the maze, so to speak, or entered the first time because they wanted to help the rest of us move to this place of freedom. You could also re-enter the maze. Maybe you wanted to re-experience life from a different perspective or perception, where you're a higher level being, so to speak, or you're beamed up into the light. But once we re-enter this maze, I really do believe we are bound by certain restrictions that we don't have once we're beyond the maze, or even when we exit the maze. And it's easy to get caught up even once you found freedom because of the density and the, let's say, the high walls of the maze. The corridors are pretty, narrow and high, so we can lose sight of what we gained before we came in. There are exit junctures every so often along the maze. And again, I really believe that we can exit the maze where we may be contracted to exit the maze, or we can go beyond that, really grow the soul further than we even expected, or sometimes, through unexpected circumstances where we maybe got magnetized so deeply that we have such suffering that we get off before we had contracted to do so. And there's no judgment. I do think, though, that wherever we got off, if it hasn't been scripted, we have to go retread some of those, some of that work so that we can really clear it. And if we've contracted to get off at a certain spot, well, then if we ever decide that we can and are able to re-enter, which can be difficult, it can be difficult to have a human birth. A lot of circumstances have to come together. But if we're lucky and we're able to re-enter where we left off, where we scripted to exit, we can re-enter there and just keep on going. I also believe that there are other ways to grow the soul beyond Earth, especially now that we're realizing, plant life and human life, or being life on other stratospheres. There are probably many ways to grow the soul. I think given the density of this paradigm, my guess is you can catapult the soul further, much easier here. There's more risks, but I'm guessing there's more benefits when you come here to chisel your being so that it's closer towards the perfection of God. Let's see, what else did I want to say about the maze? So the maze, I think, can be I think it can be likened to like a amusement ride. And if you have this maturity to your soul, you understand that when you enter the ride, to a certain extent, it's just preparatory for your soul, that it isn't it. So kind of likening it to an adult who gets on a ride with children, the adults are still scared when they go through the scary house, the maze, so to speak, the scary house maze. And, sometimes there's some pleasure there or some pain. And there's a certain perspective that an adult can take when they enter in a amusement ride, whereas a child has no concept. So in an unenlightened, maybe earlier soul, getting on the maze, so to speak, or a soul that hasn't really done a lot of chiseling, might have a lot more reaction, so to speak, to the fear-based parts of the maze and the even the pleasure parts of the maze, where they might get magnetized a little easier than a higher more mature, let's say, adult or being. So the maze has valleys. It's almost like you're climbing this trail. You know, the maze is like trees are on either side of you, so you can't really see. You're going up this really steep trail, and then other times, you know, it's easier. You get to run down, and you know, some people's trails are more ups and downs, or ups or downs, and other people's tend to be more flat, and you get to script that. Maybe in previous incarnations, your trails had a different look to this time. So you're experiencing different aspects of the maze, so to speak. But then when you get to the top, you get to look down and really see the big picture, which when you're, you know, you have the blinders on, so to speak, you can't see. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the maze. Thanks for listening. I also did one on Jesus and Jesus being Adam, you know, Adam and Eve. It came to me, I had heard that once, that Jesus was like the first human. Um, and then he perfected his own humanity so that he could kind of lead the way, kind of like an enlightened being going back into the maze to help us do the same. Like we're just later iterations. So we haven't yet done what he's done. Most of us haven't done. You know, there are other enlightened beings who have. But I just started kind of channeling about, you know, looking at like Buddhism, like why is Jesus it? And I asked my guides, and it was just a really interesting answer I got. And it had to do with Adam, like Adam and Eve. And it also had to do with the atom, ATOM, and how he learned through his journey, maybe many lifetimes, I don't know, to be able to spin in such a way that there was perfection and divinity. So that was a really cool answer I got. I couldn't find the whole write-up in the notes, and my question about like I want to see all religions as equal. And there was something that my guide said about it that was, yes, this is true. And then they got into like the atom, ADAM and Adam and ATOM. So anyway, namaste. Thanks for coming today. Thanks for listening. See you next time.